Hello and welcome to this lecture. My name is Nirav Karani. I am a PhD student with the Biomedical Image Computing Group, supervised by Professor Andrew Konukoglu. And basically, I will be teaching these last two lectures of the Medical Image Analysis course. So today we will be looking at convolutional neural networks, or CNNs for short. Okay. And what I'm going to assume in this lecture is that you guys are familiar with the terminology here that I've mentioned on the left side. So this was basically covered in the previous lecture, which was the introduction to neural networks. And if you feel like you are a bit unsure about some of these terms, I think it would be a good idea to go back there to that lecture and then refresh that and then come back here again. Okay. So this lecture is basically about putting the word convolutional in front of neural networks, right? So if we compare, so here we see a multi-layered perceptron or a feed-forward neural network, and we have a CNN here. And if we compare the two, what we see is that the MLP has a vector as its input, and then it has a number of what are known as fully connected layers, meaning each element of the input is connected to every element of the next layer, right? And then we have a number of these fully connected layers finally leading up to an output vector. What changes in a CNN, first of all, is that we have a matrix as our input, and then instead of this fully connected layer, we have what is known as a convolutional layer. This is followed by what is known as subsampling or pooling layers, and then we stack these together. So then we have convolution, pooling, and we can have several of these. And then towards the end, we get some representation of the image. And then we vectorize this image. And then we have a couple of one or two fully connected layers to finally get the same vectorized output as we were getting here, right? So this is like just a very short 2 minutes overview of CNNs. And the whole point of this lecture is to mainly familiarize you with the operations that you see here, and yeah, show you a bit how CNNs work. Okay, why are CNNs of interest to us? It's basically because they just happen to work very well on image data. So for example, you can have image classification tasks like this, where you want to classify the input image into one of several categories, or if you have a regression task like this, where you want to, for example, here predict the age of the person based on their MRI scans, or if you have image segmentation tasks where you would like to predict for each pixel in the image whether it belongs to the tumor or not, and if to the tumor, whether it belongs to a specific type of tumor or not. For these and a number of other tasks, it turns out that in the last 5-7 years, CNNs have basically produced state-of-the-art results much better than their competitors of other methods, and therefore they become obviously of a lot of interest to anyone who now wants to work in this field. Okay, so having laid down the motivation, here's now the agenda for the rest of the lecture. So we will start by looking at what are known as convolutional layers, and then we will move on to pooling layers. So these two types of layers basically form the main building blocks of CNNs. And once we have that, we can already look at a simple, CNN for classification. Then we will look at, we will try to understand what features of CNNs make them particularly well suited for image analysis. And towards the end, we will look at a few variants of the convolution operator. And then finally, image segmentation CNN. Okay, so let's start with the convolutional layers. Let's start with the definition of the convolution operator, which I'm pretty sure you guys are aware of, but just as a quick reminder, if you think of the convolution operator in 1D of two functions f and g, it is basically defined as this. It's the integral of the product of the two functions, where one of the functions is reversed and shifted. Okay, and then in the discrete case, basically the integral gets replaced by this sum. Okay, so this again inverts what we saw. And then if we try to extend this convolution definition to 2 dimensions, and this time let's consider, instead of generic functions f and g, let us consider an image I and a convolutional kernel k, both functions of x and y, so 2D. And then if we look at the convolution of I with k, that's again the product of the two functions, where one of the functions is reversed and shifted. Okay, so this reversal in the definition of the convolution operator, this is actually important to get this commutative property. What that means is that I convolved with k is the same as k convolved with I. And this can be checked by changing variables like this in this formula, right? And so although this commutative property is actually quite useful in some theoretical proofs, in practice, it doesn't turn out to be of any particular help. So whether we reverse one of the functions or not is not so important in practice. And therefore, we have this closely related operation called cross correlation, which is essentially the same as convolution, except that we don't have this reversal of one of the functions. What happens is that in practice, both of any of these two functions can be used in a CNN, and you end up getting the same performance level. So what a lot of machine learning libraries do is that they call their functions as convolution, but underneath they're implementing cross correlation. So this is not something that affects performance, but I think this is just something that is good to know. Yeah. Okay, but for the purposes of our lecture, we will just continue to call both these operations as convolution, but there can be this subtle difference underneath. Okay, and the other thing that we should remember is that this function, which we have been calling the kernel so far, the convolutional kernel, it is also sometimes referred to as convolutional weights or convolutional filters. Okay, so yeah, just so that you don't get confused if you end up reading some papers in this field. Okay, so now that we know what the definition of the convolution operator is, let's try to get a bit of visual understanding of how the convolution operator actually works on images. So for this, let's consider a 5 by 5 input image and a 3 by 3 convolutional kernel. And in order to carry out this, okay, so we will look at cross correlation. So in order to carry out cross correlation, we just place the convolutional kernel or the cross correlational kernel on top of the image on the extreme, let's say the top left, right? And then we compute the dot product of the elements of the kernel with the underlying elements of the image. So we compute this sum, and then we get one number that we put here in the output. And then in the next step, we shift the kernel one step to the right, again compute the dot product, and then put the number here. So note that the kernel values stay the same, just that they're multiplied with different image values because the kernel has been shifted. And then we get the dot product and we put the number here. And then we do it again. And once we reach the extreme right of the image, then we come down. And then we carry like this until we have basically covered the whole image. And then we end up getting this output of the operation. So visually in words, if we write cross correlation amounts to moving the kernel successively across the image and then performing a dot product at each location. If we had to do the same for convolution, it would be exactly the same, except that we would have to flip the kernel 180 degrees to account for the reversal of the kernel function. But as we said, in practice, it doesn't make a lot of difference, and therefore we will continue to call both these operations as convolution. Okay, so yeah, here we have it again. We have the image and then the convolution denoted by this asterisk, and then the convolution kernel, and then we have the output, which goes by a lot of different names in the literature. So all of these essentially are the same. They are the output of the convolution operation. So feature map, activation map, output channel, right? They all mean the same thing. Okay, a couple of things to note here is that we have output which is 3 by 3, although the input was 5 by 5. So the convolution operation brought about a reduction in the size of the output as compared to the input. And this basically has to do with the boundary pixels, because remember we started by placing the convolution kernel such that it was centered on this pixel. We could not center it on the boundary pixel, because if we had done that, then our kernel would go like this, and then it would be placed in such a way that there would be no image pixels here to take the dot product with, right? So because we could not use the boundary pixels, they are discarded, and we end up getting a smaller image in the output. And the other thing that funnily happens here is that the output size is the same as the kernel size, but this is not true in general. I must emphasize this. This only happened for this toy example because we had a, just a 5 by 5 image. Usually what will happen is we will have the image which will be much larger, something like 100 by 100, 200 by 200, something like that in hundreds. And the kernel size is usually quite small, 3 by 3, 5 by 5, or something like this. And we end up getting an output which is of the same order in terms of the same, so its size is of the same order as of the input, but it's smaller by a few pixels. And we will look at the exact formula in a bit. Okay, and now here we have visual examples of what the convolution operation can do to the input image. So here we have a MR image of the brain, and then we are convolving it with a 3 by 3 kernel like this. And I guess you can already recognize that this is going to work as a vertical edge detector. And indeed it does. We see that in the output of the convolution operation, these vertical edges kind of are highlighted. And then we can have like a horizontal edge detector here, or we could have the convolution operation doing what is known as a sharpening of the image, right? So this is basically to show that the convolution operation can bring about a lot of different types of transformations of the image. And in general, what we do is here, what I've done is I've just placed random numbers in the kernel matrix. And then when we do the convolution, we get some representation of the image. And the whole game of CNNs is this, that you start with random values as the weights of the convolution kernel, or the entries in the convolution kernel. And then these values are optimized so as to achieve, optimal performance at the task at hand, right? So this is basically the whole game of CNNs. Okay. Now we are almost done with convolutional layers, except that we need a couple of more things, bias and activation function. So what this means is that, so let's recall what happened in multi-layered perceptrons. If we had a multi-layered perceptron like this, and if we looked at a certain hidden layer like this, which went from size dl to size dl plus 1, and then if we looked at a particular element of the output, the jth element, j going from 1 to dl plus 1, then this jth element was basically a matrix multiplication which corresponded to all these inputs being connected to this output. Then we added a certain bias term, and then this whole thing was passed through a certain nonlinear activation function. So what happens in CNNs that is different from MLPs is that, first of all, these vectors get replaced by matrices. And second of all, this matrix multiplication here gets replaced by a convolution operation. So if you look at a particular hidden layer with DL input channels and DL plus 1 output channels, and then if you look at a certain output channel here, the jth channel, J going from 1 to DL plus 1, that is basically the convolution of this whole input HL with the jth filter, jth convolutional kernel, and then we add a bias term to it, and then the whole thing passes through a nonlinear activation function. And this convolution plus bias plus, and passing that through a nonlinear activation, this whole thing makes up what is known as a convolutional layer. Okay, so this is what is known as one convolutional layer, right? And then we will have something like pooling layers and so on. Okay, so now we still have to look at a final few hyperparameters which are required when we sit down and actually try to implement the convolution function. But what I will do is I will stop here for this kind of sub video, and then we will continue from this point in the next video.